Hello, everybody. Hope you all had a great day. Tonight, we are looking at observational learning for psychology, and we are um, going to look at all of the five stages or the five components, I guess, of observational learning. So let me just share my screen. And it's the last component of your learning unit for um, Year 12 chemistry, psychology, sorry. Sorry, my screen just flashed up a message that I had to read. All right, so let me share these slides. Okay, so observational learning. It's the last one. You've got three different types of learning that you needed to learn about for your Year 12 psychology. The first one was classical conditioning. Second one was operant conditioning. Third one is observational learning. Okay, so we're going to have it. We did a video on classical conditioning and opera conditioning at the end of last term. And so first one this term is on observational learning. Okay, so also in this area of study, you've got memory as well, which is coming up later on. So what is learning? It's a relatively permanent change in behavior that occurs as a result of experience. Now, that experience is what we're talking about today in observational learning. We're observing people in our environment and learning behaviors through them. So it can be intentional or unintentional, easy or really difficult. Some behaviors aren't learnt, and we're not looking at those in our study design other than a spinal reflex. And it happens in a variety of ways. It can vary, so it depends on the situation and the individual as to the type of learning that occurs, and we can shift between different types of learning. Awesome. So our dot point that we're looking at tonight is social cognitive approaches to learning as illustrated by observational learning as a process involving attention, retention, reproduction, motivation, and reinforcement. So if you move the M and the R around, it kind of says ARM. Five different components. A, three R's, and M. Yeah. Bit like a pirate. All right. So the scientist that is primarily involved in a lot of observational studies is Bandura. And he emphasized or proposed that from time to time, so that we actually learn through the behaviors of people around us. Yeah. From when we were born to all the way through our lives, we are watching all the people around us and we are learning through their behavior. Now, this can also mean that you are being conditioned, but it's not actually happening to you. So this is what observational learning is, yeah? So that means that it's not totally separate from every other learning. So you, for example, notice that somebody else has been caught speeding and they're sitting on the side of the freeway with the police, lights and going on, and you think, oh, I'm not going to speed. I don't want to lose my money. I value my money. I don't want to get a speeding fine, so I'm not going to speed. I'm going to stay in the limit. Now, that speeding fine didn't happen to you, but you observed what the consequence through someone else, and so you've learnt vicariously through somebody else. Yeah. So observational learning is not necessarily a separate type of learning, but it's definitely a way of learning. Yeah. Um, It occurs when someone uses observation of a model's action and the consequences of those actions. Now, a model is somebody that we're observing, and modeling is what they're doing. Okay, just a couple of terms there. There are 5 parts to observational learning, and they all have to occur if you're going to actually learn a particular behavior. So if we look at the last dot point there first, the learner must pay attention to the model. They then have to be able to retain that information in memory, what they've seen. They must be able to physically be able to perform whatever the behavior is. Then it is associated with some sort of reinforcement or punishment for the learner. Therefore, they also need to be motivated to imitate that behavior as well. Okay, so the 5 components. We're going to look at each of them very quickly. So you must pay attention. The very first one is attention. Now, in your questions around your observational learning, you need to make sure that you can match the label, which is your 5 labels: attention, reproduction, etc., motivation. You need to be able to assign those with a scenario and an example that somebody is doing. All right, so be very clear on each of these 5 stages. So the first one is attention. So you must observe someone. Yeah, you must have the capabilities to watch what they're doing. You must be maybe idolize that person, that you might be really interested in what they're doing. So the level of attention is often influenced by the importance of the behavior to you. If you really want to be a soccer player, you're going to look at all of the professional soccer players and what they're doing and how they play and how they move their feet and kick the ball and place the ball in a particular area of the goals, all of those sorts of things. You're going to pay a lot of attention to that detail, as opposed to somebody that just likes soccer, is just watching the game. Yeah. So the importance of the behavior to the person is really important, whether it's unique or different. So the distinctiveness of it and the effect it might have on us. Yeah. Also, the greater the similarity of the model to the observer, and also how attractive the model is or how successful the model is, you're more likely to follow their example. And this is one of the reasons that advertisers and marketing people use celebrities or really good-looking people in their ads, because you're more likely to pay attention to them. The second one is retention. And having observed that model doing a particular behavior, you have to be able to make a mental reconstruction or mental representation of that behavior and be able to retain it so that you can then reproduce it. Okay. So sometimes that behavior, if you're watching the soccer match, let's stick with that example, you're not going to be able to reproduce that behavior or those moves that he was making on the field right then and there. So you have to have some sort of memory associated with it. So retention. Reproduction, you have to have the facilities to be able to do it. If you're in a wheelchair, for example, being able to reproduce that soccer player's moves and behavior is not going to happen. Yeah. So you have to have the actual abilities to put into practice what you have observed. Yeah. So be very clear on all of these stages. Remember, attention, you have to be paying attention. You've got to idolize them. They might be really good looking. You're watching, observing their behavior. Your retention, you have to make a mental representation. You've got to be able to store it in your memory. Reproduction, you have to have the physical attributes to be able to reproduce that behavior. Okay. Motivation, you've got to have the motivation or the desire to actually complete that behavior. Yeah. It has to be useful, or motivation and reinforcement often go sort of hand in hand there. If you get some reinforcement for a particular behavior, it will give you motivation to continue doing it. Yeah. And then obviously reinforcement, you learned that about reinforcement in operant conditioning, but this can be external reinforcement. So from somebody external to you. So somebody might give you praise or, give you money for the work that you do, those sorts of things. You can also learn vicarious reinforcement, which is when it doesn't actually happen to you. You're watching somebody else be reinforced for a behavior and you go, I want to get a piece of that. And so that's vicarious reinforcement, and also reinforcement inside yourself. Those standards that we hold for ourselves can reinforce behavior. Okay. Awesome. So they're the 5 components of observational learning. So remember, you need to be able to match the label of attention, retention, reproduction, motivation, and reinforcement to a scenario, so an example. So let's have a little look just very quickly at a couple of questions. Now, if you want to do these questions by yourself, please pause me now, have a go, and then push play when you want the answer. So William is aged 5 and he adores his big brother Sam. He's age 7. Sam recently learned how to ride a skateboard. William is also likely to learn how to ride a skateboard due to which stage of observational learning and associated reason? Okay. So, attention. William idolizes his brother. Do they match? I think they do. Retention. William wants to learn how to ride a skateboard. Does that match with retention? Is he making a mental representation of that? They don't match, do they? William anticipates himself being able to balance on a skateboard. Is that motivation enough for him to do it? Absolutely not. I think William wants to learn how to ride a skateboard is more motivation, yeah. And William can create a mental representation of riding a skateboard. Again, that's more retention, isn't it? So our answer is A. And we'll do one more. So pause it now if you want to have a go. But 5-year-old Frank does not put his rubbish in the bin, even though he's watched his parents do it so many times. He has also reminded his younger sister to put her rubbish in the bin. So he remembers, he knows how to do it. In terms of observational learning, Frank will be most likely to put his rubbish in the bin if he has the motivation to put rubbish in the bin. I think we're lacking a bit of motivation there, aren't we? Because he's observed his parents, he's retained it, he knows how to do it, he's physically able to do it. Is developmentally ready to put rubbish in the bin? Well, we already know that he is. Pays more careful attention to his parents' behaviour. Well, he's already paid attention. He watches his parents do it all the time. Develops a mental representation of putting rubbish in the bin. Well, he already has done that because he's reminded his sister. So again, the answer is A. Okay, so in this area, make sure you really understand those labels, those 5 components, and also in a scenario, do lots of questions with different scenarios, different situations, so that you can really pinpoint the stages. And if you can do that, all good. Awesome. So I hope that's been helpful. And I will see you next week with another video.